On a crisp Monday morning, 14-year-old Jasmine Porter stepped into Oaked Bank, dressed in her school uniform, a simple blazer, skirt, and loafers. Though nervous, she carried herself with pride and quiet determination. That day marked a milestone in her journey toward independence. She would be making her very first solo bank deposit. The $5,000 check she held wasn't just money. It was a symbol of her hard work, a reward for her academic excellence that earned her a full scholarship to the prestigious Westridge Academy. Jasmine's decision to handle the transaction on her own wasn't driven by arrogance. It was a reflection of the values her mother, Dr. Naomi Porter, had instilled in her from a young age. As one of the nation's top financial experts, Naomi had built her own career from the ground up and believed deeply in the power of effort, discipline, and humility. She taught Jasmine that success should be earned, not inherited, and that independence was a strength to be nurtured. That morning, when Naomi offered to accompany her to the bank, Jasmine politely declined. "I've got it, Mum," she said with quiet confidence. It wasn't about proving anything to others. It was about proving to herself that she could navigate the world on her own terms. Though she didn't know it yet, what awaited her inside the bank would challenge her poise and strength. But in that moment, Jasmine was simply a young girl determined to stand on her own 2 feet, and she was ready. As Jasmine approached the counter of Oak Bank, clutching the scholarship check she had worked so hard to earn, she expected a straightforward transaction. Instead, she was met with cold suspicion and thinly veiled condescension. The bank teller, a young man named Tom, examined the $5,000 check as if it were a counterfeit bill, holding it up to the light with narrowed eyes. Behind him stood the bank manager, Victoria Hayes, a sharply dressed woman in her late 40s, whose demeanor exuded authority and superiority. When she noticed Jasmine, her smile faltered. "A $5,000 check? For someone your age?" she asked, her voice rising just enough for other customers to hear. Despite her nerves, Jasmine responded calmly, presenting her scholarship award letter and school ID. But instead of being acknowledged for her achievement, she was treated like a potential criminal. Victoria muttered about recent fraudulent checks and insisted on a lengthy verification process, refusing to allow Jasmine to contact her mother, claiming, "That's not our problem." As Jasmine stood waiting, alone, phoneless, and increasingly anxious, she began to feel the weight of the stares around her. Whispered remarks floated through the air, and glances of judgment cut deep. The treatment she was receiving had little to do with bank protocol and everything to do with how she looked. She noticed that other customers, particularly white ones, were being greeted warmly and ushered through without hassle. An elderly couple received VIP treatment. A man with an accent was brushed off. And when a white couple walked in with the same paperwork as the previous man, they were welcomed with open arms. The disparity was glaring. Jasmine, though only 14, had always been observant. Raised to value fairness and dignity, she quickly recognized the subtle yet undeniable pattern of bias unfolding around her. What stung most wasn't just the public humiliation. It was the realization that she was being judged not by her merit, but by her skin color and age. Victoria's behavior made it painfully clear. Jasmine didn't belong in this space, at least not in the eyes of those who held power there. And as the manager coldly instructed security to keep an eye on her, Jasmine stood frozen, hurt, humiliated, but quietly resilient, refusing to let their prejudice define her worth. While standing alone in the corner of the bank, humiliated and ignored, Jasmine's sharp eyes caught something unusual. Across the room, Victoria Hayes, the manager who had treated her with cold disdain, was engaged in a hushed conversation with a well-dressed man Jasmine didn't recognize at first. His presence exuded power, and Victoria's overly accommodating demeanor raised Jasmine's suspicions. As she watched more closely, the man's identity clicked. Harrison Wells, CEO of Meridian Banking Group, a known competitor of Jasmine's mother's firm. Jasmine's pulse quickened. Her mother had mentioned Wells before, often in the context of hostile business tactics. What truly alarmed her was the manila folder Victoria handed him, clearly marked, confidential. Jasmine couldn't hear the conversation, but the secrecy, the body language, and the folder's label told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a routine interaction. It was a betrayal. Suddenly, Jasmine realized the mistreatment she had faced might have served a larger purpose. Keeping her in the corner, under surveillance, could have been a distraction, just enough to ensure no one noticed Victoria handing over sensitive materials to a business rival. Jasmine's mind raced. What if that folder contained documents stolen from her mother's firm? What if Victoria was using her position to sabotage the bank from within? It wasn't just about discrimination anymore. Jasmine had stumbled into something much darker: corporate espionage. She gripped her leather-bound notebook and began jotting down everything she had observed: names, times, actions, documenting the scene with clarity and purpose. Though she felt powerless only moments earlier, Jasmine now understood she held something even more valuable than her scholarship check: the truth, and she was determined to protect it. Despite the hours of humiliation and the weight of isolation pressing down on her, Jasmine remained mentally alert. Her years of discipline and observation had prepared her for moments like this, not just in academics, but in life. As the realization of Victoria Hayes's betrayal settled in her mind, Jasmine knew she couldn't let this moment pass. She may have been treated as if she didn't belong, but she had just uncovered something far more significant than personal mistreatment. Victoria wasn't simply a biased manager. She was actively conspiring against the very institution she worked for. Jasmine's leather-bound notebook, which she always carried, became her most powerful tool. With trembling fingers and a steady mind, she recorded everything she had witnessed: the precise time of the meeting, the way Victoria handed over the confidential folder to Harrison Wells, and the shift in tone and urgency during their exchange. Jasmine didn't know exactly how she would use the information yet, but she knew one thing: she had to be ready. The evidence she was gathering could protect her mother's company from potential sabotage and expose the corruption festering within Oakdee Bank. For the first time that day, Jasmine didn't feel like a helpless teenager stuck in a corner. She felt like a witness, a guardian of truth, someone who could make a difference. Though her heart still pounded with a mix of fear and anger, she refused to let it silence her. Instead, she leaned into her instincts and training, discreetly taking notes, watching every move, committing details to memory. Jasmine was no longer just waiting. She was preparing. And though she hadn't yet spoken out, a quiet, unwavering decision had already taken root within her. She would not let this injustice go unanswered. Just when Jasmine felt the weight of the bank's cold silence might crush her spirit, the heavy glass doors swung open, and in walked her mother, Dr. Naomi Porter. Dressed in a crisp blazer and exuding an air of quiet authority, Naomi's presence immediately shifted the energy in the room. Her sharp eyes scanned the lobby until they landed on Jasmine, still standing alone in the corner, looking worn down but unbroken. Without hesitation, Naomi crossed the room, her heels clicking with purpose. "Jasmine, are you okay?" she asked gently but firmly, her voice lined with maternal concern. Jasmine nodded, fighting back the emotions that had been building for hours. "I'm fine, Mom," she replied, her voice steady. "But there's something you need to hear." Reaching into her bag, Jasmine pulled out her notebook and began reading the detailed notes she had taken. The blatant discrimination she had endured, the dismissive treatment from Victoria, and most importantly, the suspicious exchange between Victoria Hayes and Harrison Wells. Naomi listened intently, her expression growing colder with each word. When Jasmine finished, the room had fallen silent. Naomi turned to Victoria, who had approached cautiously. "Miss Hayes," Naomi said, her voice icy and composed, "I believe you owe my daughter an apology, and I believe you owe me an explanation." Victoria stammered, trying to deny the allegations, but Naomi was unmoved. "You've been leaking confidential information to a competitor. That's not just unethical, it's criminal. I have no doubt that internal records and my daughter's detailed notes will confirm everything." Her voice echoed with finality as she added, "You're fired." Effective immediately. Security was called. The very guard who had once watched Jasmine with suspicion now escorted Victoria out, her confident mask shattered. As Victoria disappeared from view, Naomi addressed the room. "This bank will undergo a full review. No one should be treated the way my daughter was today." Jasmine stood taller beside her mother, pride swelling in her chest. What had begun as a painful moment of injustice had become a turning point. Not only had Jasmine found the courage to speak up, but she had also helped uncover a betrayal that could have cost her mother's company dearly. The silence of the lobby was now filled with a new energy: respect, accountability, and change. In the weeks and months that followed the incident at Oakdee Bank, profound changes rippled through the institution. An internal investigation revealed that Victoria Hayes had not only attempted to sabotage Naomi Porter's company by leaking confidential documents, but had also fostered a toxic environment riddled with discriminatory practices. Her termination marked just the beginning. The bank's leadership launched a full-scale review of its policies, implemented mandatory equity and inclusion training, and established new accountability protocols to ensure no customer, regardless of age, race, or background, would ever be subjected to the kind of treatment Jasmine had endured. Jasmine's experience became a case study in the importance of ethical conduct and respectful customer service, not just at Oakdee Bank, but in financial institutions across the region. Meanwhile, Jasmine herself underwent a transformation. What had started as a humiliating ordeal turned into a moment of personal awakening. She realized her voice mattered, that even at 14, she had the power to expose wrongdoing and advocate for fairness. She was invited to speak at Westridge Academy, where she shared her story with fellow students and faculty. Her message was clear. Dignity and justice are not privileges. They are rights. She spoke not only about her own experience, but also about financial literacy, ethical leadership, and the importance of standing up against subtle forms of discrimination. Her story inspired many, and her courage opened doors to new opportunities, including youth leadership forums and mentorship programs for young girls of color. Back at the bank, Jasmine's quiet ally, the kind teller named Melody, was recognized for her integrity and promoted to a managerial position, proof that fairness and empathy still held value in the corporate world. For Jasmine, the pain of that day would never fully fade, but it became a powerful part of her journey. She had faced injustice, documented it, spoken up, and helped dismantle a harmful system from within. Through her strength and her mother's example, Jasmine learned that real change often begins with one person refusing to stay silent. And though she walked into Oakdee Bank as a young girl just hoping to make a deposit, she walked out with something far greater: her voice, her purpose, and a platform to make a difference. This story is a powerful reminder that injustice often hides behind polite smiles and professional settings, but it is through quiet courage and moral clarity that change is made possible. Jasmine, though only 14, teaches us that integrity has no age limit. Her decision to stay calm, observe, and document rather than react with anger is a lesson in grace under pressure. For older generations, it serves as both a reflection and a call to action, to mentor, to guide, and to continue standing up for fairness in all corners of life. The story also underscores the importance of parenting with purpose. Naomi Porter didn't just raise a successful student, she raised a young woman who understood her worth and could stand tall even in adversity. In a world that still struggles with inequality, this narrative encourages us to listen closely, support the younger generation, and never underestimate the power of a single voice. Whether in a family, a workplace, or a community, doing what's right may come at a cost. But it often leads to the kind of change that ripples far beyond the moment. And that, perhaps, is the greatest legacy we can leave behind, a world more just than the one we inherited.